Good afternoon and a big welcome to you all to this Medicine and Dentistry Admissions Information Session. I'm Dr. Jonathan Turner, Director of Admissions in the Faculty of Dentistry, Oral and Craniofacial Sciences here at King's College, London. So this event's geared towards those of you looking to apply for 2021 entry. And we're going to provide information about the application and admissions processes, as well as taking questions around these topics. You'll be hearing firstly from myself, talking about the admission process for dentistry, and then from Dr. Nikki Cohen, Deputy Dean at the GKT School of Medical Education, and then from Alice Stonehouse from our school's liaison team, who'll be talking about how to structure your personal statement. After these presentations, we'll be answering your questions. We'll endeavour to get through as many of those questions as we can. However, if we don't get through all of them, we'll do our best to provide answers in the thread for this meeting, either today or in the coming days. So please place your questions in the chat box, and it's very, very important to please mention the course you're interested in so that we can then answer the questions accordingly. So what I'm going to do now is kick off with my presentation. So just bring that up for you. So I'm going to be covering the entry requirements and applications process for dentistry. So we kick off with the entry requirements. A reminder that we've actually got 4 different pathways through our dentistry program. So we have the standard 5-year A205 pathway. We have the 5-year enhanced support dentistry pathway, part of our WP widening participation initiative. We have our 4-year graduate entry GPEP program, and then our 3-year A204 pathway for medical graduates. So to kick off with the standard 5-year pathway, the A205, our standard offer for that pathway is A-star AA at A level. So what we're looking for A level number 1 is either chemistry or biology. A level number 2, either chemistry, biology, physics, maths or psychology. And then the third A level can be anything with a few exclusions, as you can see listed on that slide there. There are some additional requirements as well, such as GCSE English language and maths requirements, and of course UCAT, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. Of course, some of you may not be doing A levels, some may be doing, for example, the IB, so we're looking at 35 points, including 766 at a higher level, and a similar range of subject requirements as for the A levels. And likewise English and maths requirements and the need to sit UCAT. And of course some of you may be doing all sorts of other qualifications, and so you can find details on our website about all of the other qualifications that we will accept as well for entry to A205. So A206, this is our 5-year program as part of widening participation. So this is geared towards talented students from non-selective state schools in Greater London, and for people doing some of our WP schemes such as K+ and realising opportunities. And so this program is exactly the same as the standard 5-year one in terms of curriculum, in terms of the assessments that are done. And in fact, the individuals on this program, we have 10 places every year on this program, are completely anonymised, so the other students don't know who's on this program. But we do offer additional academic support for individuals on this program should they require it. And the entry requirement is 2 grades below our standard A-star AA. So the entry requirement is AAB, with the same choice of A levels that we've mentioned before, and the need, of course, to sit UCAT. The graduate entry pathway A202, this is designed for people with a degree in topics such as biomedical science, some professional degrees such as medicine, pharmacy, and we're looking for a 2-1 or better, or alternatively a 2-2 plus at least a merit at master's level, and again the need to sit the UCAT. The 3-year pathway, this is for doctors that are registered with the General Medical Council, planning a career in, for example, maxillofacial surgery. So they need to have done completed their foundation years 1 and 2 at the point of entry, but there's no need for them to actually sit the UCAT exam. So in terms of the application to dental school, hopefully most of you that are planning on applying this autumn already know all about the UCAT, so I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but you need to have sat the UCAT, and of course you haven't got long to register if you haven't done so already. You've only got a couple of days, so if you haven't looked into this, you need to do so pronto. And 1st of October is the last testing date, and this year of course you have a choice of sitting this exam either at home or in one of the Pearson VUE test centres. And again, for those of you that maybe haven't sat it yet, do go to their website and do all of the practice papers and so on there, because the more you practice this test, the better you would tend to perform. Likewise, be aware of course of your UCAS deadlines. So October 15th, 6 o'clock UK time, you need to get your UCAS form in, and as part of that UCAS form, of course, you need to have your personal statement. You've got a whole talk about personal statements coming up, so I'm not going to go into this in a great deal of detail, but from a dentistry point of view, what we're really looking for is that you have done your research into dentistry as a career. In previous years, we've looked for work experience, so we've looked for people that have spent time maybe in a general dental practice. But of course, we're fully aware because of COVID that the vast majority of our applicants this year won't have been able to get work experience in a dental practice. So that's not a problem. But what we will be looking for is that you found out what a career in dentistry is all about. So you've done your research, you've looked at books or papers or spoken to people, and you know exactly what a life as a dentist is all about, the good bits and the bad bits. You need to be a people person, of course, to be a dentist. You'll be interacting with patients all of the time, so that's something you may be able to demonstrate in your personal statement. You may have done some voluntary work to indicate your interactions with the public. Again, that can go in your personal statement if you've done any of that. We're looking for your academic achievements and extracurricular activities, so hobbies and so on, and at what level. So if you're playing badminton, say, do you play for the school? Do you play for the county? If you play a musical instrument, have you done any exams in that musical instrument? So at what level are you doing these hobbies too? And so as a very rough guide, when we're looking at that personal statement, we're looking for about a 75%, 25% split. So about 25% talking about your extracurricular activities, your hobbies, and about 75% geared to what you found out about dentistry, about your academic performance and so on. And then, of course, when we get the UCAS form in, we'll look through the personal statement, we'll be looking at your references and your academic performance, including your UCAS score. We then decide, having looked at the UCAS form, who's called to interview. And so these interviews are usually held, in the past, they've been held December through to March time. And for all of our programmes, apart from the 3-year medical one, these historically were multiple mini interviews. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to talk through the last interview cycle we had. So for those of you not familiar with the multiple mini interview format, we had 7 questions for dentistry. So what happened was the applicant went into a little booth, one applicant, one interviewer. The applicant was asked a question, and then they had 6 minutes in which to answer that question. At the end of which the bell went, the applicant left the booth, and then they sat outside for 90 seconds while the interviewer scored them. Another bell went, and the applicant went into a second booth, where a second interviewer asked them a different question, and they had 6 minutes to answer, and so on and so forth, till they went round and had answered the 7 different questions. So no trick questions. We're not there to trip you up. We're going to be assessing things like communication skills, maybe some ethical scenarios. We'll be looking at how would the interviewee contribute to the dental school as a whole, and again, making sure that that interviewee really does understand what a career in dentistry entails. Okay, so that's how it went in the last cycle. Now, of course, going forwards, because of COVID, things are likely to be done a little bit differently in this next cycle. So this process is almost certainly going to be done online, but we're going to be following a similar sort of format. We're going to be looking at the same areas. So all the things I've just been talking about, we're not there to trip you up, but those areas I've just been talking about, the understanding of dentistry, etc., are going to be the type of things again we'll be looking for. And so keep an eye on our website. So further details will be posted on there about the exact details. So in summary, you've really got to do that research. You've got to do that homework to make sure that dentistry is the career for you. It's going to change a lot over the next few decades. Of course, people entering dental school next year, it could be almost half a century before they retire potentially, and so there's going to be a lot of changes in dentistry over the next 50 years. So you need to be prepared to embrace change. You need to be resilient. Okay, things are never, aren't always going to go well. Things are going to go wrong. So you need to be a resilient sort of individual, and a people person. You've got to like interacting with the public in your day-to-day life. So I know a lot of you are working hard towards exams and so on, so I wish you all the very best of luck, and I'm going to just leave this presentation with a few websites for you which you may find of use, and I'm going to pass you now over to Dr. Nikki Cohen, who's a Deputy Dean at the GKT School of Medical Education.
Thanks, Jonathan. Yes, so I'm Nikki, I'm Deputy Dean within King's for Medicine. I've been working with the admission team on the admission side of things for the last few years, alongside some other commitments. I'm a GKT graduate myself. I'm not going to tell you what year, but it's lovely to be working at a place that I've been at as a student as well. You see things that join up along that way, and it's lovely to see. I have a few slides, and on top of that, there's lots of information on the web. Do get in touch in the usual way through the usual King's portal if you need to. Okay, so next slide, if I may. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So within medicine, it says here that we run 3 degrees, and that's largely correct. I'll talk about them now. So our standard program is the A100 program, which is 5 years, including an intercalated BSc to take it to 6 years. You can opt out to be intercalated BSc, but we advise candidates strongly not to. About 30% of our standard A100 intake will have done a degree beforehand, and for them it may well not be sensible, but we do prefer people to intercalate. We don't mandate it, but we certainly prefer them to. It gives you a better, more rounded education. On top of that, we run our accelerated 4-year program, which is for students particularly with a biosciences degree background. Essentially, their previous knowledge replaces what we deliver in the first year of the program, so they come into stage 2 with a small preparatory module first around clinical skills. The GPEPS module is available for 28 biosciences graduate students. We also run a very similar Max program for 2 students who have done a prior dental degree. The 4th offering there really is our EMDP program, which is for students who come from a widening participation background and a variety of measures, but essentially a non-selective state school is the priority within the UK. And their program is 6 years with the BSc as well if they require, so up to 7 years. And for the EMDP program, the first year is split over 2 so that we can support EMDP students more as they come in, help them with their learning skills, help them adjust more. And we see real success in that way. We monitor performance measures year on year, so the way that different students from different cohorts perform on exams, and we see after the first year no real difference, no significant difference in performance of students from those 3 programs across exams. Next slide, please. There we go. So every medical degree is a complex beast, and we are all very competitive programs. You can only put down 4 choices out of 5 on your UCAT statement for every year, and I should say now very clearly that if you apply for EMDP, we will only consider you for EMDP. If you apply for GPEP, we will only consider you for GPEP, and the same for A100. So you could end up using 2 of 4 choices quite easily here at King's. So you need to make sure that you're within a spitting distance of the requirement. So our requirement is A star AA at A level. To include biology and chemistry. We don't mind what the 3rd subject is in. We don't really mind what the A star is in. But if a student gets A star AB, then they can expect their place will not be honoured. It is rare in usual years, very rare, for us to accept drop grades. So if you are not in reality an A-star AA candidate, it might be better for you to look elsewhere in terms of the AAA offerings, because you can only accept one and one reserve, and you want to make sure that you can meet that. We do have equivalence with that, which I think is 766 in terms of the BATS. If you want to get into the A100 program, you can also do so with a prior degree, a 2-1 and AA in biology and chemistry in the usual way, or with a biosciences degree, and you may choose the GPEP route that way as well. The GPEP route tends to be even more competitive. We do require English and Maths to GCSE B, and there is also a requirement around IELTS for those students who need it, which is at a 7. In EMDP, we take a slightly more gentle approach to everything, but our standard requirement again is ABB, with one of the A's in biology or chemistry. We also require the English and Maths, so it is a competitive degree. There is no point in fudging that. In GPEP, we require a 2-1 in a bioscience degree. In previous years, students who haven't got a 2-1 have tried to add to a 2-2 with a master's and things like that. We do try and focus very much on the 2-1. Next slide, please. There we go. So you all know about the UCAT, and I hope very much that you're finding that sitting in a testing centre and going into UCAS with your known UCAT score allows you to make a more considered judgment on where to place your bets. All UK medical schools are great, and the reasons that different students select different ones is variable, and so it should be. 5 years, 6 years, 7 years is a long time, and you will tend, once graduated, to quite often stay working in the same area, stay practicing in the same area. So you've got to go with your gut a lot here. The place that you choose, that you decide you most want to go to, at the end of the day has to be because it's the place that feels right. And it is difficult to get at that feeling in these COVID times. We all realise that. But really, a lot of this has to come down to gut. In terms of UK CAT, the important thing to remember is that we don't give advice about what score you've got to go over, because the scores change year on year. We look at a combination of your UCAT score and your A-level, and we schedule MMIs based on that magic number, depending on what course you're going for. So there is a little bit of give if you've done fantastically well with your A-levels, but your score is low, but there's not a lot. The other thing to say is that within the situational judgment component test, if you come out in the bottom quartile, we will not consider you. So it's not just the overall score, there's some context in this, because of course you're on a professional program. So we use that ranking, assuming your personal statement is fine, to rank you for interviews, and we then make the decision about whether we offer you a place or not, primarily down on interview. Because of the normal curve of the way that most people, a large cohort, perform at interview, we always end up with a bunch of people around the middle, and we sometimes go back to prior results and prior information to separate those candidates. But for the most part, whether or not you get a place will be down to your MMI. Next slide, please. So your personal statement, there is no golden bullet. Probably the most honest truth I can give you is that we know that there are lots of ways of getting variable amounts of help with your personal statement. I've worked for schools in the past where there was a grid and you used to get ranked based on what you said, because we didn't use the UK CAT previously at other schools. Because we use the UK CAT, that takes up a large amount of the decision making for us. So what you want to make with your personal statement is that it reflects you, it describes what experience you're drawing upon to make this decision, and that it's honest and free from typos would be good. Next slide, please. This should go without saying. We're here, we're in the business of making fantastic doctors. And the doctors of tomorrow are people who will work with their patients, who will be creative, who will need to be resilient, who will work with teams, who will lead them sometimes, who will follow them at other times, who can assess lots of information coming from lots of different places, who can adequately assure their patients, who can work with patients and their families in an ethical way to provide care. So brilliant people come into medical school. We know that you're fantastic at A-levels. You have to be fantastic at exams in order to get into medical school. What we're really looking for beyond that is the person who's going to be a great doctor. And that can be a difficult thing to judge, but it has to come from the heart. It doesn't just come from the head. Next slide, please. So then we do, of course, make a little bit of a contextual assessment around you, not around the offer that we make, that's set, but around how far up the offer list you get. And that depends on a lot of things, such as the average performance of your school. And so that's used before the interview process, but it is important. And next slide, please. There we go. So as I've said, offers are based on your MMI performance. I should talk about MMIs here and say that ours will be running virtually, so online, with the exception of a couple towards the end of the cycle that we are reserving for face-to-face for students who have difficulties for whatever reason with managing virtual MMIs. Now, we will only ever be able to offer those in socially distancing appropriate environments, so we don't have any details about what the backup solution will be for the students who can't manage virtual interviews. But our virtual interviews will run between the second half of November and the middle of March in fairly similar ways. We're going to run a slightly more simple solution than most time, but you will be interviewed by a cohort of 4, which will include a lay representative, one of our current MBBS students, and 2 others who will be a mixture of clinicians, NHS consultants, King's academics and King's clinical academics. It's because we want to take that rounded approach to you in order to make sure that the people that we select are highly valued by a large number of people, not just people who are at the highest echelons of medicine and may fit into particular characteristics, but not others. We make the offers as soon as we can, so we don't hold back, we don't interview everyone and then rank. We start offering as soon as we can after interviews, and equally we make our offers as soon as we can, but we have to monitor very carefully our conversion rates, so the number of offers that are turning into firm offers and to accepted and backup places, because we don't want to end up in a situation where we have over offered. We're really, really proud of the way that we've managed admissions in this last cycle. We've managed those numbers very well and very honestly and fairly to all, but we do that by very carefully adjusting the numbers of offers we make based on the circumstances. So if you are given an offer and you accept it, we absolutely honour it. If you have been interviewed and we haven't yet told you whether you've got a place or not, it's because we need to see more of the cohort, because it's not possible to give you that decision straight away, but we don't hold back. We give you decisions as soon as we can. And I think that's it. I think that's my last slide. Yes, there we go. So now over to Alice.
Hello everyone, I'm just going to share my presentation. Okay, so I am going to give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour on medical and dentistry personal statements and how to make yourself stand out. Hopefully at this point, for all of you that are applying for 2021 entry, you will have made a start on your personal statement. So just a quick overview. So it's as you both mentioned, for dentistry and medicine, it's key. You have only 4,000 characters, which is including spaces, and 47 lines, so about one side of A4. It's to demonstrate your motivation, your enthusiasm, and also your aptitude. And you're definitely going to want to orientate it towards either medicine or dentistry, depending on which one you're applying for. So to look at the structure, you want to talk about why do you want to study medicine or dentistry, so your motivation, and this also your academic interest and your achievement. So what have you done so far that is relevant and shows your interest in medicine and dentistry? So that can come under work experience, or as we've mentioned, because of the current situation, it could be that you've done a lot more research, but anything that shows why you're interested and why it's the right career choice for you. If you have had any voluntary experience, work experience, it's how has this made you the learner you are, and how does it make you suitable for the course. And also about extracurricular experience. So what activities are you involved in outside of the course? We do also want to know that you are well-rounded people, and sometimes it's a good way of talking about, we know that medicine and dentistry can be often challenging career choices, but if you're able to talk about how you can decompress and things like that, that's one way to talk about your extracurricular. So we're looking for about 4 to 5 good paragraphs, and with an introduction and conclusion. I'm going to be honest, the introduction, your conclusion, you don't really want it to be any more than a few lines, because you want to make sure you're adding value. I'm going to mention this a lot. Everything you say in your personal statement, you want to be adding value. So how could you demonstrate why you want to be a doctor or a dentist? So this could be, did you have a personal medical experience, or is it your love of science and people? And then what you could do is think, okay, so why do I love science? And then use a personal example of it. What is it about caring people that motivates you, and what experience sparked this? If it's a personal experience, what was the experience, and what did you learn about medicine and dentistry from it? And why did this make you want to be a doctor, a dentist? So this will add value and will tell us a little bit more about why you want to be a doctor or dentist. We don't really want to hear that you've wanted to be one your whole life. That doesn't add any value. So really think about the why, and if there was a specific time, and if there wasn't, then what is it that you enjoy about medicine and dentistry? Looking at work experience. So personal experience, like I said, is a good motivation, but work experience demonstrates the necessary skills. Obviously, this is not a normal year, so I'm going to talk about work experience here, but we will take that into consideration. So if you did work experience, you've done any voluntary work or any online volunteering or phone volunteering, what did you learn from your work experience? Tell us more. Honestly, we don't just want a list of things that you've done. It's all well and good if you have 10 different voluntary or work experience, but that's not interesting. We want to know, what did you learn from it? So as I just said, use a small number of examples effectively, and really think about what you learned and how this made you know that dentistry and medicine was for you. What things that you can mention about your work experience. For example, it could be teamwork. Did you work in a multidisciplinary team in a hospital? What did that teach you? Communication. Did you observe a dentist reassuring a patient? What did you learn from it? Talking about empathy. So these are all, you'll notice, teamwork, communication, empathy are all things which are important in both dentistry and medicine. So you do want to be linking all of your experiences and your research back to the sort of the main components of being a dentist and medic. So were you able to listen and understand an empathetic care worker in a care home? How did that make you feel? And then, did you experience the realities of being a dentist and a medic, such as, did you see or have you ever experienced or breaking bad news? How were you affected? So these are just sort of, there are other things you could also write, but just to get you thinking, if you're a little bit stuck on how to talk about any voluntary or work experience you've had. So a few things that you do want to include. So your key skills and competencies. You could talk about your EPQ, because this won't be part of your offer, but it's a really good time to mention it, and that because it could show more research that you've done into the career you want to do. Like we said, work experience or placements. If you have gone to any taster days or lectures or exhibitions or summer schools, even if it's virtual, you know, you could have seen some really great online lectures talk about this, but obviously make sure you're making a point and you're talking about what you learnt and what you understood from it, not just I went to this, this and this. Relevant extracurricular activities, any awards, achievements, and just things not to include. There are a few things I hope I don't have to say, but I'm going to mention it anyway. Obviously, no lying or exaggerating. You may get asked about this in your interview and you could be stumped and you'll probably get caught out. So just be honest. Obviously, no plagiarism. Don't copy anyone else's work. You know, you may get help from family members and teachers and so on, and that's okay. But make sure it is your own work and you're not copying anybody. Like we've said, you're going to have 4 choices and then 1 extra choice. Don't mention university names, even if you have one in your mind. It's like, yeah, I really want to go here. That's fine, but you're going to only put off the other universities. So don't mention university names. Obviously, no spelling, grammar and punctuation errors. We don't really want to see those at all. No informal language and punctuation. We want you to sound like you, but also, you know, this is you're applying for a degree, so you still want to make sure you aren't using informal language. But on the other side, we don't want you to sound like you swallowed a thesaurus. It's not very natural and it's quite jarring. So don't just copy and paste your whole personal statement into thesaurus.com because it just reads really strangely. So just be formal but not over the top, and then don't use any irrelevant quotes. It's fine to use quotes from books and any talks or lectures that you have read or listened to, but obviously you want to make a point with it. Don't just put any irrelevant quotes. I'll also add here, I haven't written it, probably not to name drop. It's fine to talk about an author that you have read a book about or a TED talk, whoever it was that spoke, but you've only got 4,000 characters, so you don't want to sort of waste any of those words on talking about you shadow this doctor. That's not very important. It doesn't add anything extra. It doesn't add value. But you can talk about what hospital you went to, but the exact person you shadowed isn't very, it's just not very interesting for us to read. It doesn't tell us anything about you. So like I've been saying, whenever you write about something, think about to yourself, what's the point? What am I trying to say? Am I adding any value? Am I really showcasing my, I guess, your passion or why you want to do medicine and dentistry? So opening lines to avoid. From a young age, I've always wanted to be a doctor or dentist. Is simply not true. And doesn't add anything. It doesn't tell us anything interesting about you. So go, you know, for as long as I can remember, I have. Again, it doesn't tell us anything about you. I've always been passionate about. So here, you can talk about dentistry and medicine being potentially a challenging environment to work in, but we want you don't want to talk too negatively. It's, you know, we want to know that you're going in with your eyes wide open and you understand that it's not always going to be an easy career choice, but try not to use any too much negative language. You also don't need to mention what you're currently studying because we can already see this in your UCAS application. So don't waste your words on saying that you're currently studying biology at A-level because we already know that. So how to evidence? So we like to use the what often I suggest is the CAR method. So you've got context, action, and the result. So in context, where were you, what were you doing, and what were the circumstances? And then the action is, what was the activity, why were you doing it, and what were the skills demonstrated? Here it could be that you were observing and you weren't the one doing the activity. And then what did you, the result, what did you achieve, what skills were improved, or what knowledge did you gain? So you could use this in talking about a piece of text, or something you read on the news, or a TED talk or anything like that. Just make sure that at the end you're really talking about what you gained and what you learnt from it. So yeah, explain and evidence, and afterwards, obviously, hopefully you will have done several drafts to go back and read through and think, okay, does this add anything? Is this valuable? And then you can eliminate it. So fewer points, greater richness. Okay, I've got another slide saying what's the point, because that's how important it is. So don't overthink your opening paragraph. Open with why you chose that course. Make your point quickly, and you don't need to start at the beginning when you're writing your personal statement. That can be really daunting. You can come back to the introduction. Some ideas for you to start from: reading, researching during my maths biology class, following the recent coverage in the news, while volunteering, ... All of these things are helpful. You might find helpful with your introduction. So I'm sure a lot of you have been doing lots of research, as potentially work experience hasn't been available. So you could do this through job descriptions, through books, podcasts, through museums, TED Talks. Honestly, there are TED Talks for everything. So if you can just type into Google anything TED Talk that you are interested in that's relevant, you'll probably find something. And usually, top tip, usually at the bottom of a TED Talk, they will list all texts and relevant books and so on onto a TED Talk, so you can then go and do even further research. And of course, don't just list all these things you've read and watched, talk about what you gained from it. So 3 key messages: what did you learn? And you deserve better than a first draft. So, you know, if you're on your first draft, just go back through and get someone, if you have someone to help you, that's great. If not, just go back through and think about the points I've mentioned. And again, like I said before, what's the point? Always make a point and make sure you're adding value. So thank you. So we are now, stop sharing. We're now going to move on to the Q&A. Dr. Satana and Dr. Cohen will answer your questions verbally, and Daniel Richards from Admissions and other members of staff and students will also be answering some in writing.
Great, thank you, Alice. So I'm the voice behind the scenes, but I'll be putting the questions to our panel. So thanks for all your questions that have come in so far. We've had quite a few along very similar themes, so I'll just kick off with the first question, which is around timings. So a lot of people want to know our timings around when we give offers and when interviews take place.
So I think for medicine, I probably talked about that within my presentation. I don't think I have anything more to give around those dates, I'm afraid.
For dentistry, we normally start the interviews in December through to March. Possibly we may be starting slightly earlier this next cycle. We tend to give out a few offers, maybe in January time, but as Dr. Cohen mentioned earlier, we don't give out all our offers right at the beginning, because of course we may have fantastic students on the last day of doing interviews, and so we deliberately hold back on giving out all our offers until we've interviewed absolutely everyone. So then we can look at all of the applicants and then hand out the interviews. So some people being interviewed may not necessarily receive an offer till sort of end of March time for that reason. So we're fair to all interviewees basically.
Great, thank you everybody. We've also had quite a few questions about interviews, so around when they'll take place again, but you've already covered that, and then also the format that they'll be in, especially this year given COVID-19.
Okay, so for dentistry, they're going to be online. I mentioned in my presentation about the MMI format that we've used in previous years, and so the key thing is that the exact format we're still finalising the details for, so keep an eye on the website. But the key thing is the content, the type of things you're going to be asked, what you need to be able to answer. So that's exactly the same thing, what we're looking for in the applicant. And so it's probably going to follow a similar line to the in-person face-to-face MMIs, a variant on that, but exact details will be put out on our website shortly.
Great. And similarly for medicine, I think I probably covered that in my talk actually, which was after the question went up.
Yeah, great. And then we've had quite a few questions about UCAT scores. A lot of people want to know how important they are, and there's a lot of questions around what's a minimum score acceptable, and also how the UCAT score ranks above against all the other criteria that we have. What's more important, a UCAT score or an A-level grade or an interview? So if I could pass that over to either of you, that'd be great.
Okay, well, the camera's on me at the moment, so I'll kick off for dentistry. So for dentistry, as Dr. Cohen mentioned in her presentation earlier, we don't give a fixed value because, of course, it all depends on the cohort that's sitting the UCAT in any one year. So the average score of the applicants is going to go up and down year on year. We tend to say, to give you a ballpark figure, around 650 tends to be usually a competitive type of score, and UCAT, of course, is just one of the things that goes into our mix of things that we're looking for. We talked earlier about the other academic qualifications, but as I say, about 650 is usually a competitive score for dentistry. For medicine, I'll pass over to Dr. Cohen.
So I'm not in the business here of giving absolute numbers. We don't do that for a reason. As I described in the talk, we use the different components of the UCAT slightly differently. If you're applying to GPET, your number needs to be a degree higher than it is for A100. And if you are an EMDP applicant, then generally there tends to be a little bit more variability within that, which is fine. It all goes down to the fact that we only have certain numbers of interview slots and we only have certain numbers of offers. So if you are a low UCAT, no degree of A-level brilliance is going to make up for that. And similarly, the other way around. Around the borderline, there's a little bit of give and take, but it's a competitive program, and we have to select the best. That's what we're here to do.
Great, thank you very much. My next questions are around the theme of work experience. So I'll put them individually because I think some of them might need a bit of work on their own. So the first question is, if I've had arranged work experience but was subsequently cancelled due to COVID-19, is it worth mentioning that on the personal statement?
Hi. As was mentioned by Alice in her presentation, you don't want to waste words, and so every word's got to count in your personal statement. And so if you've arranged something but didn't do it, I'd wonder whether you could probably use those words in a better way. Let's put it that way.
Great, thank you.
Oh, I think Alice had her hand up there.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so to add on to that, you basically want to make sure that, like I said many times, everything adds value. So there's probably something else you can talk about that you can extend and explain on what you learnt if you might have done other research. So yeah, like you don't want to waste your words saying you were going to do something and then didn't do it, because what did you can't have learned anything from that. Yeah.
I guess the only thing within medicine that I'd add is that sometimes you're sat in an MMI and candidates who have gone through all that stage or are now at the interview will want to not answer the question that you're asking them, but instead tell them about all the different bits of learning of work experience that they've done. And in the MMI, answer the question. That's what you're going to get the points for. Other stuff, you won't. So if that's useful, then I would use it.
Great, thank you. And then another question, which I think has probably been covered, but it'd just be good to make it clear here, is what if I've not been able to get any work experience? Will that count against me?
can explain why you want to do the degree that you've chosen, which is a long degree with all kinds of things that you need to give up in order to do it well, and a career at the end of it. So if it's not possible, but you have something to describe that shows the thought processes and the things that you've weighed up in order to get there succinctly, then that is fine. But it is difficult to do that without having a little bit of an explore around that somehow.
Yep, and likewise, you know, for dentistry, for 2021 entry, we're fully aware that people have really struggled to get work experience. Most applicants won't have got it. So likewise, no, you won't be disadvantaged if you haven't actually physically gone and sat and watched a dentist. No.
Great, thank you. And then we've had quite a few questions come through. I'm not sure how well we'll be able to answer this, but the questions around the area of COVID-19 deferrals. So given that our deferral procedure for 2020 entry, would that affect the number of places available for 2021?
Well, in dentistry, this in the cycle that's just finished, all of our offer holders that met their offer requirements, even after the CAGs were released, we fitted them in, you know, so they were actually given their place. So they didn't have to defer. You know, we're fully aware of you know, everything that's going on in relation to this, and so, you know, we are striving to be as fair as we possibly can to, you know, to the next cohort of, you know, of applicants as well, and so we're hoping that there won't be a big knock-on effect to the next intake.
Within medicine, which is a large programme at King's, to a really negligible amount compared to most other UK medical schools, there is proportionately, I would say, less effect at King's than there is elsewhere.
Great, thank you very much both. So one question that's really popular on the chat, just back to the work experience, is work experience from previous years still relevant to talk about in a personal statement? Yeah, Alice?
Yes. Oh, is it on me? Yes, definitely. Because you can still talk about what you learn, and you can still make a point that's valuable, and you can still talk about it will still, you know, hopefully you haven't just made this decision to do medicine or dentistry in the last year. Hopefully it's something you've probably been thinking about for a couple of years. So if you did work experience 2 years ago, and you can still talk about what you learned and why that made you want to be a doctor or a dentist even more, then that's great.
Similarly, a fair few people come into the trade having been patients themselves, and you don't need to have been a patient within the last 6 months. People with childhood illnesses survive for longer. What you learn about providing care sometimes comes from receiving it in ways that never ever achievable in other ways. So that would be really powerful as well.
Wonderful, thank you. And then another popular question, which is around the idea of online MMI interviews. What happens if there are problems with the internet connection? Would you be at disadvantage with bad internet connection?
I'll take that one. The short answer is no. We need to make sure that we are able to make a very careful, fair and honest assessment of all of you, and we will do that. So we will check what we can there. If things are disastrous, we will reschedule, and as I said, we have the backups with face-to-face at the end of the day. You know, trains sometimes don't run on time. Last year, one of the days where there was an MMI, there was a police incident around the corner. So you know, we are adaptive individuals that are able to cope with a certain amount of crisis, but don't be concerned about that. Do your best, and that is all that is possible.
Great, thank you very much. And then let me have a look at some more questions that have come through now, just quite recently. Some questions around sort of how many applicants to places are available. So yeah, how many people do we offer to, and how does that compare to the number of applicants that we normally get?
So we provide some evidence, some figures around that in the information which we've linked to in the chat for this session. I think it's probably a thing that you can overestimate in terms of thinking about your odds. What King's is very good at doing is identifying people who are best for us. Each program is different. One of the reasons that we use students on our interview is because they're very good at identifying other applicants who will fit within the King's community, and that's something that we want to see. So that figure really only gets you so far, because either you're great or you're not, and we know you are. That's why you're applying for King's, as you might say.
Yeah, so from the dentistry point of view, for our A205 program, we have 111 places for home students, and in the last cycle we had just over 700 applicants for that program. But of course, you've got to bear in mind that of course these applicants have also put other dental schools down on their UCAS form, and also for dentistry, unlike I believe for medicine, you can actually apply for A205, and if you're eligible, to the enhanced support program, or you can apply to both the GPEP program and the 5-year A205 program. So you can put two King's courses onto the same UCAS form. Dr. Cohen, correct me if I've got that wrong for medicine, but
you can do the same for medicine, but we'll only consider you for what you put on the form.
Okay. Yeah. So for the dentistry, if you've applied for both GPEP and the standard 5-year program, potentially you may end up getting 2 interviews. The applications are considered completely separately, so potentially you may end up getting two offers, and then of course you've got to decide which one perhaps to make your firm on. And so those numbers, so coming back to the question, the 700 odd applications, you've got to bear in mind, as I say, there's a limit to what you can deduce from those numbers, because some of these applicants are applying to more than one program. For GPEP, we have 20 places. We had about 220 applications in the last cycle. For the enhanced support, we have 10 places, and we had around 160 places, 160 applications for those 10 places. So that kind of gives you a bit of an idea of the numbers for dentistry.
Great, thank you very much. And then we've had a question come through around how we assess the applications. So can GCSEs, A-levels, university predictions and personal statements compensate for an average UCAT score?
I think, as Dr. Cohen said, for medicine, it's a similar thing. There's we put all of these things into our considerations, but if you've done, particularly, you haven't got a particularly strong UCAT, then the chances are you're not going to be able to compensate with the other elements. We do look holistically, but there's a limit to what you'd be able to compensate for dentistry. And I suspect it's what Dr. Cohen said for medicine as well, I believe.
Benefit with being a UCAT score over different selection criteria is that you go in knowing what your score is. So I would use that information wisely to channel your 4 spots on your UCAS application sensibly.
Great, thank you very much, everybody. We have about 5 minutes left of this presentation today, so we'll be able to get through maybe 1 or 2 more questions. So looking at the questions that have come through now, there's one, I'm sorry, circling back to work experience again, but how relevant is it for the graduate entry programs? Is it as needed as the standard entry, or more required, or what are your requirements for that?
So for dentistry, it's exactly the same, because what we're interested in as a dental faculty is taking on people that are going to enjoy doing the program, and are going to be successful and go out into the big wide world, enjoying life as a dentist. Because the last thing we want, or more importantly, the last thing you want, is to find sort of 2 or 3 years into your dentistry program it isn't for you, and you decide to quit, or worse still, 4 or 5 years into your professional life, deciding it's not for you. And so this is the key thing. This is all about, it's really for you rather than for us, making sure that you understand what that career is all about. And so what we're looking for in terms of a GPEP applicant is exactly the same as what we're looking for any other applicant for dentistry.
I would hedge some of that a little bit differently. So there is no shame in achieving a medical degree and using that knowledge and that experience and that professional basis and wisdom to make a difference somewhere else in professional life. So it has always been the way that roughly 10% of doctors don't stay in the profession beyond 10 years. That's fine. Medicine isn't for everyone. If we have a student who comes onto the programme and gives up shortly, then what they've done is essentially take the place of someone else who may have made more of a difference. But there is no shame in deciding once qualified that it's not for you, or even taking careers advice along the way and making a different career choice. What matters is that you've taken sufficient advice that's available to make the decision correctly in the first place. We're not in the business of wanting to see students leave the programme, but every now and again it's actually not a bad thing.
Thank you very much. So just to end this question and answer session off, we've had one question, which I think it might be quite nice just to put to both Dr. Turner and Dr. Cohen, around why choose King's College London for medicine or dentistry?
Oh, some cameras on me. Well, I have to say, I mean, I actually was I'm an alumni from King's College London, from Guy's Hospital, and I went back to do my postgrad training there as well, and I love it. I mean, it's you're in the heart of a really sort of, cosmopolitan city. There's so much going on there. In terms of the experience we're offering our students, we're sucking in patients from all over the south of England, so they get a huge range of dental experience. It's a massive sort of referral centre. So it's a very large school. It's the largest school in the UK for dentistry, and so again we've got a huge number of staff, all from different disciplines, all bringing different things in, into the mix. And so it's a fantastic sort of environment in which to work. We've got these 4 different programs. You've got students from all sorts of different backgrounds, different life experiences, and so on. So it's a fantastically diverse mix of students and staff, and that's what I like. That's why I think it's so fantastic. It's just that buzz, of being up that guy's tower. Dr. Cohen.
So I remember when I was just entering my final year at school, and I remember going on a number of, they weren't quite set up in the same way, but we got a sneak peek of a number of different hospitals along the way. And it was, goodness, more than 30 years ago now. But I remember turning up at the gates of Guy's and walking across what is now the car park and walking onto the colonnade and walking through the colonnade and just thinking, this is home. It was that sense of, actually, this feels right. And at the end of the day, I think that's what matters. The King's Medical Programme is a new curriculum. We are escalating up the NSS at a rate of knots. You get to experience central London expertise, teaching hospital, tertiary degree centres, together with a really good mix of basic general medicine. And it's that combination that you need in a curriculum that is forward thinking, so that you are well equipped for the next 50 years.
That's great. Thank you very much, everybody. That's the end of our event. Unfortunately, we're up with our time. Sorry we've not been able to get around to all of your questions, but I hope that you found that useful and valuable. This is going to be recorded and put online, so you will be able to watch it back as well. I'll hand over to Dr. Turner or Dr. Cohen in case they want to have any final final words, but other than that, thank you very much for coming.
Yeah, so thank you very much for joining us. This brings us to the end of our afternoon session. So I hope you have found it informative and helpful, and I hope you'll consider putting King's College London down as one of your UCAS choices. We're going to continue answering some of these questions as we said at the beginning, offline, as it were, over the next few days. So don't panic if we haven't been able to answer your question verbally now. We'll do so over the next few days, and we look forward to hopefully welcoming you back to King's next September. So thank you very much, and bye bye.